So this is a little funny. There was already a district meeting vote to allow this money to be spent from this fund, but the law requires that every time we make a transfer out of the fund that you hold a public hearing and then vote to do it. So up to $25,000 was approved by the district meeting. For this purpose, we've already withdrawn $15,600 and then $4,712.50, and now tonight the request is the next $2,537.50, so we're still under the $25,000 max. And then the second is, the second request is from the same fund. And this is one that you are agents to expend from that we've been talking about. It's actually the first item in my report tonight also. So this is the $125,000 that was, she said no.
Expansion fund, so it would be the $350,000.
Okay, second and then third?
Yeah.
Okay, so second is the money from the future expansion fund to cover the purchase of the church, which is now the Early Learning Center across the street. So the way that one worked, again, the warrant articles were already approved. So the authorization from the legislative body to do this is already there. First, you were authorized to sell the Hannah Nutter Road property for $318,000. That money by law drops into our general fund and requires a second vote to move into a reserve fund. That was also approved at the district meeting, so the $318 from the sale of Hannah Nutter Road goes into the future expansion fund, and then this will allow us to take the $350,000 from the future expansion fund to reimburse us for the purchase of the church. So it's exactly what was approved at the March meeting. And then the third, now I get to say this, and then the third is this year's $125,000 transfer to the building maintenance or building and grounds fund. We talked about as one of the four components of how we would pay for the parking lot project, and we're asking you to do that tonight. So we've been talking about it almost every month, but in order to actually take the action, you have to post and hold the public hearing and then take the vote. So we're really here to do three things. I got that right, in that order.
Okay, so in summary, we're looking for $352,537.50 from future expansion fund and $125 from building maintenance. Okay. Does anyone from the public wish to speak to those issues? Okay. Hearing none, I will close the public hearing at 6:09.
Do you need individual motions on this?
Either that or we can do it when we get to action items.
Okay.
If it's clear in your mind and you want to do it now, we can.
Yeah, let's do it now.
Okay. All right.
I make a motion to withdraw $352,537.50 from the future expansion of the ES fund to reimburse payments made to H.L. Turner, as well as to reimburse payments made to purchase the property located at 96 Maple Street.
Second. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye. I make a motion to request a withdrawal of $125,000 from the building maintenance fund to reimburse payment made to Busby Construction for the paving of the back parking lot.
Second. Discussion on that? All those in favor?
Aye.
Agenda review. Oh, for sure. That's
Make a motion to accept the agenda as presented.
Second.
Are we going to, do you need a non-public this evening?
Yes.
Okay. Anything additional for the agenda? All those in favor?
Aye.
And minutes?
I make a motion to accept the minutes from December 20th, 2023.
Second.
Discussion on minutes? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that brings brings us to our first general public input, if anyone has anything they would like to discuss. Seeing none, I will close first public input and move on to BES administration. And Cara's not here, but her report is in the packet. If you have any comment on that. And the enrollments are in our packet. Information, I didn't see anything from technology, but there was a buildings and grounds report. Shown. Anything on that? And move on to SAU administration and financials. Any questions from Heidi or anything that Heidi would like to add?
Next month you'll see I will have encumbered the shared services lines, which haven't been done yet, so that'll be a big change.
Next is the letter from Drummond Woodson on the legal rates. Would you like us to accept that?
So I want to point out that your firm of record has not been Drummond Woodson here. But over the last year, because we're working across the system, we've been using them for more and more. We haven't officially made any change from Wadley Star and Peters, so they are still available to us. So I'm ready for you to have a conversation about staying with Wadley Star and Peters, and if you want me to, telling us to work with them more versus accepting rates from Drummond Woodson and making them your firm. If you don't want to make that decision tonight, you certainly don't have to. There are 2 members missing. We could have meetings about that. But I wanted to point that out. We're putting a Drummond Woodson price list in front of you. And you're used to using them, right? You used them in high school on the January board.
Yeah, and I like him very much. My only holdout was that the town then took him on, and I just worry about.
So my thinking has been not to terminate the relationship with Wadley Star and Peters, so that we'd always have them to go to. If there were ever a conflict between the school district and the town, maybe it's good that we're not streaming today. Drummond Woodson would actually refuse to represent either party, so it wouldn't matter. The school board would be looking for its own firm, and the town would be looking for a different firm, or something like that if it came up. It happens from time to time because there are only so many school and municipal law firms in the state. So they run conflict checks even for us all the time. Say we have a student moving from one school district to another, and there's some question about financial responsibility during the period of transition for some reason. If Drummond Woodson or Wadley Star and Peters happens to represent both school districts, then in that matter they would represent either school district. They don't choose.
I do like the continuity that it gives you.
I mean, it's nice for us, right? Because we don't have to think about who am I calling for this.
Right.
It's particularly been useful in special education matters where we have common administration now, so kind of a way of doing things and our thought process about things can be consistent. We don't have to explain it to different people.
Who do they use it? I'm okay with you using your discretion on who to call. But do you think?
The prices are very similar.
Yeah.
They're all.
Do you need a motion on this, or
Do we
it's
need to
just
accept this?
FYI?
I mean, it's you hear this from me. You've been hearing this from me for a few years. If you're not going to yell at me for doing it, I don't need you to vote.
When you need it, you need it.
Some things you have to vote on by law.
Alright, there's a report from Matt in the packet, which I think we all reviewed. Do you have anything to add?
So yeah, on Matt's report, we did a data dashboard here last month. One of the things we've been incorporating, I think we talked about this, is some data around behavior, referrals and student time out of classrooms and things like that, because that's definitely been a noteworthy change this year in all schools. From the stuff he has here, I don't think I have anything to add. You can see the schedule for our professional development day. Next week, we're sending a couple of teachers to some PD around science of reading, which is a concept, not a product, but it's a concept that's likely to drive our next reading program after Lucy Coffins. And that's work that'll continue into next summer and likely some implementation starting this fall.
So this is just BES and ACS, it's not.
Well, so we want the concept to drive reading
No, I mean.
everywhere. Oh,
This.
yes, that is. Oh, and we just did our second round of STAR testing. Does he have that, or did Cara have that in hers? That's nice because now we can start to look at student growth over time. We talked about this last month, and we'll be able to break it down by individual student, by students in the same classrooms, by students with other characteristics in common, by age group as opposed to classroom placement, students with documented special needs versus without. Really useful, and it's nice to finally have our second data point that for the first time is going to allow us to look at growth.
Any comments on Matt's report? You're up.
Yeah, on mine, we didn't get the source water protection grant, which is kind of a bummer. It would have been nice to get another $25,000 for that project. So I've broken down for you, again, this is, I think, the third time you've seen this list, but you can understand why, I'm sure. You know, we've all taken this leap together to do this project, knowing that we've got $104,000 remaining that we've got to identify the source for. We have multiple sources that you can legally take the money from. It's just a matter of figuring out which one you ultimately want to use. So, you know, getting the source water protection grant would reduce that amount. Without it, we've already taken $121,209 from last year's surplus, the additional $74,162 inadequacy that was voted at the special meeting here in October, the $125 that you just took action on. So we've got $320,371 in funding for the project. We are looking for $104,017. And that could come potentially from the ESSER or another federal grant. It could come from unencumbered surplus at the end of this fiscal year. It could even come out of the municipal bond that we're about to float, if it needs to. That's personally my last choice, because the more of that money we can use for other things, the more other things we're getting to do. And the whole idea here that I think the district meeting endorsed last year is let's whittle away at our needs here as much as we can before the next opportunity comes to maybe get state aid and do a bigger project, because construction prices keep rising. So the more we can reduce the scope along the way, the less increase we hope to see. Got a real brief update on parking lot. Sean's been making signs and pouring concrete into buckets and things like that. But we want to focus on communication with this, so we're really not in a rush to implement a change. I wouldn't even be shocked if at your next meeting we're still saying we're about to start handing out flyers and sending those. I'm not sure. We might do it before then, but we want to do it once and we want to have it work, and we know everybody cares. So we really will probably go out there and do a couple of dry runs without traffic, just talking to each other. Is this going to work? Is that going to work? Before we actually.
It really depends on the day. Like today was no problem, but the other day it was like everyone was picking up over there.
Please, this morning was a disaster though. Like people
this
trying to
morning's
turn
drop
left
off.
and that it was a mess.
Yeah, more signs, more.
This afternoon
control.
there's a waste management truck coming this way, and I was like, oh no.
I also noticed I was expecting to see about a dozen cars minimum over in that lot every day once it was paved, and I'm not seeing that many. But I happened to have a meeting at this school middle of the morning today, and I noticed there was no visitor parking available.
I was actually going to mention that, so.
I sent an email to the principal.
Okay.
I think it's taken care of.
Because like, every time I come to pick up a kid for a dentist appointment or whatever, there's no visitor spot, and
Yeah.
I'll just park in the fire lane, but I don't wanna do that. But it's all staff and the visitors parking, so it is frustrating.
We have plenty of parking, and our staff have to use it. I use it. I try to park
I don't blame them.
way
It's
over
really
there when I
cold
come
in
here.
the morning, but I had to park at the country store the other day, and I had to sweep and grab them like
Yeah.
right before dismissal. So get it. We'll get there.
I think we can take care of it.
I will just talking about the timeline. I know it seems silly, but if there is anything that we could do to have it rolled out before the end of like basketball season, I just feel like afternoons are going to get more chaotic when kids are no longer staying after school.
Okay.
That break before baseball.
Oh,
and other
I don't.
sports pick
I mean,
up.
I hope we're done before your next meeting. I just didn't
No,
want you to
that's
be
fine.
like,
I
why
was
isn't that
just
done
gonna
yet?
say, we obviously see the numbers pick up.
Yeah.
Right, there's a month in the fall and a month in the spring where there's not any
In between.
sports,
Yeah.
and it's rough.
Yeah. So that you're talking about into March, we should be.
Yeah.
No, we should be done with that. I mean, before February vacation, that's all should be in place. The renovation in A and B wing, speaking of the bond, so you appointed Milestone Construction at our recommendation as our construction management firm. They and Doug Proctor from H.L. Turner had a walkthrough here on Monday. It was really handy because it's hard to bring 30 contractors and subcontractors into a school during the day because there are usually kids all over the place. So they came in on Monday and did a walkthrough with all the subs. So the way this process works now is Milestone is taking bids. We're out of the procurement business now on this, now that we've procured construction management. They take bids from different subcontractors to do different parts of the job. So there's a mechanical company, there are mechanical companies, there are roofers, there are fire protection contractors, there are some who will do finishes, there are electricians. Milestone will get all of their responses, and then they give us a guaranteed maximum price. We will refer to that as the GMP for the next 2 years. And what's nice about this process is that includes their fees and contingency, but once we have it, guess what the word guaranteed means? We get the job done for that price or less. They cannot go over. Now, if we make a change, they can charge us for the change. So it's in our best interest to make the scope of work as close to perfect as we possibly can. So the next two things that I'm asking to do are, I'll email them both tonight, but if the two members of the Buildings and Grounds Committee are available the evening of January 25th, we'll meet with Milestone. You can meet them for the first time and talk about the scope. We've already done it, so the scope's already, we've been over it a few times. I told Doug Proctor on the phone preparing for this meeting I was trying to be proactive, and he made a joke like a little too proactive. But I've also had to pay for change orders before, so I think it's worth belts and suspenders.
It's budget committee.
Is that budget committee night? Is that a Thursday? So it's not our budget committee night?
No, but that's the one I sit on.
Oh, you're on that? Okay. So you and I can pick a different night. Jason's not here, so we can just tell him. Is that all right? And then tentatively, I'll email everyone who was on space needs. If we could do that February 1st, that's the following Thursday. There is town budget that night. So maybe we'll talk about that too.
Yeah, maybe we should.
It's a tough time of year for schedules.
Wednesdays are good.
Okay. So we'll see what we can
Okay,
do.
no, I do.
Maybe it'll be the 24th and the 28th. You and I can work that out after this meeting. But if we can schedule those two things coming out of tonight, then any change we might want to make to the scope, we really want to try to get now. What that will allow us to do is, if Milestone has it, we can take a description of the entire scope of work and our GMP to the district meeting to report back to that meeting. In your warrant for tonight, you'll notice Article 2 is X'd out. That was last year's vote on the bond. So we're skipping over that tonight. We might need a vote on that. I'm working with our lawyers on that, but it won't be the vote to approve. We already did that. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later tonight. I think one of the things I've learned about doing this kind of thing in Barnstead is the more we talk about it before we do it, the better. Mm-hmm. Right? If anybody in town feels like we did something and they didn't know we were planning to do it, they're not going to like it. So even if it's, we're going on 3 years, right, of planning and working on all of this, facilities assessments. But the good news is, I doubt there are many engaged taxpayers, or at least voters, in this town who don't know that this building has been a topic of a lot of discussion. And that's good, right, ultimately. And I think the votes reflected that last March. So that's that for now, and we'll take dates maybe tonight. I told you at the last meeting that we would be reaching out to parents and the greater community about VAS. So if you want to preview the survey that we haven't sent out yet, I gave you a QR code down there. I'm having a handful of people look at that today and tomorrow, and then we'll get it out to parents and not just VAS parents, but VES parents on Friday. I want that to go out. That gives us time to get that data back. And then we will have our next, I think it's February 7th, just during the month of February here in this report, but I think tentatively we've got that for the 7th, so early in February. And that'll allow us to look at the results of the survey. And that's a big moment, because if there's not enough demand that a private nonprofit after-school program can sustain itself, then the best information we will have is that the community wants it. So we'll do as much communication as we can to get a lot of voices to the table. We've had a really hard time getting people to show up for this steering committee, sustainability committee. But that also tells us something. I mean, at some point, one of my struggles with BAS, Heidi has her own, but one of mine has been a lot of people seem to care about it existing until it's time to do some work, at which point, oh, the school can do it. But school administrators and teachers have jobs, and those jobs are running the school. Like, we teach reading and writing and math and some enrichment. This is another thing. So I'm really trying to take as much time and kind of go as slow as possible and repeat these appeals as many times as I can so that the community has a chance to step up if this is something Barnstead feels it really needs and wants. So I think we'll post this survey online. I'll really try to we'll send it to the rec department and the helpers and all those kinds of organizations that seem to be engaged in this kind of thing. But then my hope would be that people show up when it's time to have a meeting and do some planning.
When you mention trying to determine the demand and if it's warranted pursuing, how do we make that assessment?
So the questions in this survey are, we decided at our last meeting that it would be most fair, not just to ask people, would you consider enrolling a child? Would you be interested in a program like this? But to estimate what we think it might cost. So we actually did that. So in the survey, there's an estimate. This might cost about $150 a week. If it did, how interested would you be, or how strongly would you consider enrolling a child in the program? Then the next question, BAS is supported by a grant, so there are scholarships for children who qualify for free and reduced lunch. What if we could do that with a program like this? So we were also making scholarships available for children who qualify for free and reduced lunch. How interested would you then be in enrolling? So I think there's a series of 3 questions like that to try to estimate how many people might come and pay, how many people really wouldn't don't think they'd be interested if they had to pay, but could be interested with assistance, so that we can, I mean, all we're trying to do is estimate. I mean, if 100 families say we would consider this regardless of those conditions, it's worth pursuing, right? If 20 do,
That's what I was looking for.
it's not going to support itself.
Yeah.
And we're not done at that point. Again, I want to be able to show the community, if this doesn't happen, I want people to be able to understand that we tried and tried and tried and tried and tried.
No, and I think that that's what's really important is it's an after-school program. I think there's a perception that it's school has to happen. And we came in at a time when Ava was in kindergarten, and the YMCA was running at the time, and this grant came and it became the BAS program, and we've been talking about how it's not going to be sustainable, and here we are. So it's not for a lack of effort. I think I want to see it continue to become and remain an option for parents. I think it's really important that parents have that as an option. And as transparent as we can be to make sure the message is that it's not a required option. You know, if it doesn't have your fruition, I don't want to be held accountable that we didn't do anything about it. I think we've gone above and beyond.
It's been funded by a grant that's
Yeah.
no longer going to be available to us. So
And a grant that's really effectively worth half as much as it originally was, because it hasn't risen with inflation. It's actually gone down.
right, so it doesn't.
That goes to her preference.
Yeah.
We're not done if there's not enough interest just from Barnstead parents, because a private nonprofit not located here, it could serve kids from any neighboring community. So our next step would be to try to reach out to some of the surrounding towns. I think we might have told you that Gilmanton's before and after school program had shut down. Actually, it had moved, and then it lost the lease that it thought it had at the place it moved to. It is back and up and running, and it's at Gilmanton's elementary school. But I think this is important. That's a private business that is allowed to use that building. The school's not running it. So, I mean, here, if employees of BAS call out sick, our principal is running around finding out if teachers will stay for the after-school program. That doesn't happen in a scenario like Gilmanton's, where that's just a business that's renting and using the facility. So teachers are doing their jobs at the end of the day, right? Grading student work or preparing for tomorrow, and then going home, as opposed to having to figure out how to run this I'm not supposed to call it a child care program, but this thing after school. In Pittsfield, there is an after school program, but it is an independent, nonprofit, charitable program. It's not run by the school district. The New Hampshire Charitable Foundation lends a lot of support to that program, and they fundraise in the community. And those are all things that TL Store and the Spirit of Adventure Council is looking to do. But first, are there even enough kids that it's worth doing? That's where we are right now. I mean, we have 50. We have 50, roughly, children in the program, and generally a waiting list. What's tricky about that is we are offering almost every single spot on a free or reduced scholarship basis. So how much of that demand goes away when it's not free? That's what we have to figure out. So that's BAS. Number 5, we've seen some I want to bring you some data, which I talked to Matt about the next data dashboard we do, having more behavioral referrals and things like that. But I wanted to give a little bit of a shout out to Cara and especially our BCBA Dan Haggerty and the folks we have working in the Bot and Rise rooms. We've told you what behavior has been like, particularly in our younger grades this school year, and they've created a program for a small group of kids who were having the greatest challenges staying in the classroom due to behavioral issues. And it's only been a few weeks, but they've had some success already. And that's particularly nice because it's not only good for those children, but for the children in classrooms that were being continuously disrupted. And it's not that we have not excluded kids from classes, but we've created movement in and out of those classrooms. And depending on the child, it's a different amount. And that's where these folks come in. So I think that Dan and Brittany and Ashley have done a really, really nice job. It's the kind of thing I'm happy about because it's what I envisioned when we asked to create the behavioral services group shared across schools. So we'll get you more data, more than just Tim's happy, as soon as we can.
That was their initiative? It was their initiative?
Oh, totally. I found out about it after it was done. That's even better. Yeah, that might be the best part, actually. We've had a couple of months in a row where we've talked about training for some of our special ed case managers and teachers who are on certificates of eligibility, or statements of eligibility. So we have engaged a consultant, Sarah Reinhardt, has started working with Pam McDonald. She'll be here for the first time for a day next week. And we've engaged her once a month. She'll work with Pam during the times in between and here in person with our staff on a weekly basis. And we have a federal grant that can fund this, so that's how we're doing it. And then one of you asked for some more information about how we come up with middle school athletic schedules and the rules around middle school sports. So I've given you behind my report, these are the middle school or the elementary school really athletic policies. It's one policy, it's a page and a couple of paragraphs, and then these are high school policies and procedures for athletics. It runs 6 pages, and that's primarily because the NHIAA is a high school principals association, and all of their jurisdiction is limited to high schools. So at the high school level, in order to participate in NHIAA sanctioned athletics, we have to follow their rules, right? It's something that all of our principals agree to do, and that results in all of these policies and procedures. At the middle school level, the NHIAA doesn't get involved, but as a matter of convenience, here's what really happens. Principals are left with the responsibility to create rules around middle school athletics. So most of them ask, well, what are the academic eligibility rules for the high school? And then use some version of that, right? It could be lightened a little bit or more flexible in the case of special circumstances, but that's what most places do. Choosing opponents, even though we're not in divisions in middle school, most athletic directors in Division III are responsible for their schools, middle schools, as well as their high schools. So what they normally do when they meet to do their schedules, they do their high school schedules first, and then in the afternoon, after lunch, or whenever next, they do middle school schedules. So for schools like ours that haven't been a part of that, the ADs have created schedules that include us. So we can do whatever we want, is really what it comes down to. If we start trying to pick and choose individual sports, like, well, we want to play you in baseball, softball, volleyball, and soccer, but gee, basketball's not going so well, that's going to become a relationship problem between us and that other school. Because they're trying to fill schedules, just like we are, right? Everybody wants to have a certain number of games. We've had a problem here, particularly the last couple of years with schools who don't want to come play here. So we are playing a lot of road games, from what I understand. I haven't looked at the schedules, but you guys should know that better than I do.
It seems to be both. We're playing like away and then home,
Yeah.
but I think the concern is our former AD, I think, had us playing predominantly Lakes Region schools, which we had like a really solid girls basketball program, and that was his passion, and so more competitive, playing Laconia and Guilford and bigger schools. But the problem is, not that the girls are doing okay this year, not that they're not, but we're up against schools that are drastically different sizes.
So when we play Winnisquam, for instance, they had, I think they said for their boys basketball team, they had 50 to 60 students try out. Not count, and that's 6th, 7th, and 8th. We're bringing up our 5th graders, and like tomorrow we're playing Laconia, and it will be the same thing. I mean, it just feels like, number one, we could probably reduce some travel costs by not going all the way to like Newfound and just further schools, when there's a whole bunch of schools locally that are much similar communities. So you think of like Epsom, or we used to play Chichester, we used to play Pittsfield. We don't play any of those schools that are nearby. And so I don't think it's all about just winning, although it would certainly be nice to be in a game remotely close. But it's more, it just doesn't seem like, why are we playing these huge schools that are true middle schools when we've got, at least for basketball, we've got 5th graders just to make the teams. And there's a huge difference. I mean, we've played teams where our average height is probably under 5 feet tall, and we're up against children with beards. Like, it's just, it's tough.
Did this start, I'm curious now, with the winter season and not in the fall?
So it's been like this as long as I can remember.
That's what I was looking for, and I don't know where to start. I was just trying to do some homework to find out. It was changed at one point, and I don't know when, and I don't know how to answer that
This
question.
year, at least?
No, it's
You're not
been
huge
4
on that.
years.
It's been at
Oh.
least, Dylan's been,
Like when Delaney, so she's a freshman, when she was maybe in 5th grade, I think we were still playing, we played Chichester, we played Pittsfield.
You know why it's good for me to know this. So it's not necessarily just this year.
No, it's
and
not.
it's
So
not just
this
this
year-
winter season.
No.
This
I'm
year was
working
a-
backwards. so
No, so
it's
this year
been
was
several years.
This
Yep.
year was a plug and play
Sure.
in my mind, right? So I think what's happened is it's now these, you know, and it is about relationships and whatever. So now these schools are used to, okay, Barnstead's going to play us, and to your point, most of them don't like coming here because it's far away, that we don't have a real gym, that they're playing in huge gyms. So sometimes it's not always the most amicable thing when they show up either, but it would just be nice to be with, it's similar to high school, like, you know, we're traveling to Berlin and White Mountain this week, which stinks, but those schools are similar size to us, so it's more comparable. And I think that's all we're looking for across all sports. So softball, baseball, soccer, basketball, like.
I can't tell you how helpful it is for me to know this goes back a few years. I can look into it and try to address it either way, but that's going to change my approach, so thank you.
Yeah.
No, it's definitely been probably at least 4 years, maybe
Okay.
longer.
And I think, you know, it's hard, you know, oftentimes we think of it with a parent hat on, and I think that's where it comes, it's a little bit more pressing, right now during boys basketball.
Totally understand.
So, did we have a lucky soccer season? Absolutely. Is that sustainable? No. We won't always have a winning season. There just happens to be a core group of boys that play together. But what I'm seeing, I have a couple kids in mind, is they yes, they hold their heads up high. Yes, they, you know, we as parents try to encourage them about there's things you learn even when you're not winning. It's not all about winning. But I have kiddos that I used to coach and rec that have walked away from basketball.
You gotta win once in a while.
Or at least not lose by 40.
All right, that's helpful. So you just saw me. I already sent myself a note.
Yeah.
No, we appreciate
I think we can
it.
start. We can start trying to figure this out.
We just thought we should talk about it now because
Yeah.
our understanding is
They start to
they
make the
start to
schedules.
make the schedule like ahead of time.
So there's actually a chance that the spring schedules aren't exist.
Well, right,
I wouldn't
and
be
we probably
surprised at
can't
all.
affect softball and
I'm not
baseball,
worried about
right?
this year.
Right, no, but
But
going
like
next
for
year,
next
sure.
year, if we
Yeah.
can get ahead of it.
So let me go back, please, to what's actually in my report. It's the good news. In middle school, the NHIA, I mean, we have to play White Mountain, we have to play Berlin.
Right.
There are Division III opponents, and the NHIA puts us in Division III based on the size of the high school, and that's the way it is, right? In middle school, we really can choose our opponents within all of these other considerations that we've already talked about.
Right, and there are, so like we play Gilmington, we play
Yeah.
Alton, those are comparable schools.
Sure.
And those games are more competitive as a result, because it's similar sized communities.
Well, I mean, even as Matt Jazokis and I were having a conversation as I prepared for tonight's meeting, we were wondering, like, Litchfield. I mean, I don't know if we've ever played, and I understand the old SAU divorce thing could have, maybe there's a political element to that.
We did, I remember playing
But
them in
it's-
soccer.
they're right there.
Although Pittsfield's enrollment's so low that a lot of times their middle school plays for their high school. So they don't always have a middle school team because they'll have middle school playing JV or varsity.
Sure.
But we did play them years ago.
Yeah. Interesting. It's all helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. I've got a couple of things on.
Alright, information and action. So we did the fund situation warrant.
So on the warrant articles, we'll go to the town budget committee with your warrant article recommendations by their last meeting. We do meet with them this coming Monday, so we could take them that night. We could also wait till the following. They are aware that you're in the middle of a collective bargaining process that may or may not lead to what here would be Article 9. So they know that they might get that on February 1st. And that's just the way that is. But if that happens, it'll need a special meeting for you and a bunch of other stuff that we'll cross those bridges when we come to them. In the meantime, you've got Articles 3, 4, 5, these are standard, you do them every year. That's the only reason I'm going slow, is to make sure when there's something new or different, I want to point it out. 6 you do every year. 7, this is the first of the 2 articles about the high school's capital reserve funds that would allow us to change the way we fund capital improvements at the high school. So Article 7 is the article to discontinue the existing general maintenance fund and the athletic fields fund. And then Article 8, which is contingent on Article 7, and they're actually recursively contingent on each other. Article 8 is the one that creates the new capital improvement fund using the money that came from those other 2. And then it looks like you normally make a recommendation on the reconsideration articles, so Article 10. Oh,
Yeah,
so
that's
never
only
mind.
if you're-
Never mind. Article 11 is the budget, and that's your warrant. So we don't have a cost warrant article specific to Barnstead Elementary School beyond the operating budget this year until you make some kind of an agreement with the Support Staff Association.
We have till June to act on that warrant from last year, right?
We're going to sell it in August or July. July is the sale.
So do you want preliminary approval?
So you won't have another meeting to recommend these, so
Okay.
tonight's the night to recommend this.
Okay.
Yeah, so they'll just have to be 3 out close, but that's okay. Well, or 2-1.
So do I need to read
Whatever.
through the whole article?
Well, but they're not numbered right, so,
So 3 becomes 2, right?
Not necessarily. You can do
It
them as
doesn't
currently
matter.
numbered.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a.
alright.
That's a change we have. We need to renumber that.
Article numbers not being included, it's kind of loose.
Okay. Yes, I think we need to go through one at a time so we can.
And read the whole
recommend.
article.
We usually do.
Alright.
Although we don't have
Or
minutes,
let's
so
do
we
it.
can.
You're usually reading it into a recording.
Right, yeah.
Are we recording?
Alright, I make a motion to recommend article currently number 3 to determine and fix the salaries of the school board and the compensation of any other officers or agents of the district as follows. Moderator, $150 per meeting, clerk, $150 per meeting, chairman of the school board, $2,700, school board members, $2,500 each, school treasurer, $2,500, truant officer, $125, and supervisors of the checklist, $100 each per meeting.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I make a motion to recommend article number 4 to see if the school district will raise and appropriate the sum of $309,545.00 for the support of the Barnstead Elementary School lunch program. This appropriation will be funded by a like amount of revenue from the sale of food in state and federal sources.
Second.
All those in favor?
I make a motion to recommend article number 5 to see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate $300,000.00 for the purpose of funding grant programs, i.e. IDA, Title I, etc. Said amount to be offset by matching federal and state revenues. No monies to come from taxation.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I make a motion to recommend article number 6 to see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum up to $125,000 to be added to the building maintenance fund previously established. This sum is to come from June 30th fund balance available for transfer on July 1. No amount to be raised from taxation.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. I make a motion to recommend article number 7 to see if the school district will vote to discontinue the following capital reserve funds. Number 1, Prospect Mountain High School General Maintenance Fund established on March 13th, 2007 with a current balance as of December 15th, 2023 of $169,139.00. Number 2, Prospect Mountain High School Athletic Field Capital Reserve Fund established on March 11th, 2014 with a current balance as of December 15th, 2023 of $119,718.00. Said funds and accumulated interest to date of withdrawal are to be transferred into the general fund. The passage of this article shall be contingent upon both Alton and Barnstead school districts adopting this article and upon the passage of Article 8.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I make a motion to recommend article number 8 to see if the school district will vote to establish the Prospect Mountain High School Capital Improvement Capital Reserve Fund under the provisions of RSA 35:1 for the purpose of funding the annual cost of the JMA Joint Board's capital improvement plan for the maintenance, repair, and improvement of school buildings, equipment, fields, and campus, and to raise and appropriate the sum of $288,857.00 to put into this fund said amount representing 50% of the total monies, $569,422.00, with this amount to come from unassigned fund balance available for transfer on June 30th, 2024, with no amount raised from taxation. Further, to name the Prospect Mountain JMA Joint Board as agents to expend said fund. The passage of this article shall be contingent upon both Alton and Barnstead school districts adopting this article and upon the passage of Article 7.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And do we do the last one? Or can we? Because it might change.
This is what you recommend.
Yeah, you recommend this amount.
Okay.
And then if they change, you have the option of recommending the changed amount or not.
Okay.
Make a motion to recommend Article number 11 to see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate $15,067,435.00. The net appropriation for the Prospect Mountain High School operating budget for the support of schools for the payment of salaries for the school district officials, agents, and for the payment of statutory obligations of the district. The Barnstable School Board recommends $15,067,435.00. The net appropriation. I like to just Okay.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Alright. Parish request for the early warning system?
So, St. Catherine Drexel Parish, their priest and some members of their trustees came over on Monday. We were here anyway for the contractors. There are 10 double-hung stained glass windows on the first floor in that church. There's a rosette over the choir loft that looks like it was donated either by or in memory of the Bishop of New Hampshire at the time, Bishop Burton. You've heard of Bishop Burton. And then there is a Palladian stained glass window, rectangle with an arched top, in the front of the church, way up high, with a representation of St. Peter. St. Paul. They are interested in owning those when the time comes, or if the time comes that they're being removed from that building. We also have 3 crosses. They're copper sheet metal. They're really lightweight, it turns out, even though they're pretty big. They're hollow on the inside. That we removed and are sitting in storage over there right now. So I told them that I thought that if they really wanted them badly enough and wanted to pay for replacement windows to be put in, they could probably have all of them, and you would be happy to do that, right? Mm-hmm. I wasn't surprised that that wasn't really what they're looking for, but if the time comes that we're doing a renovation over there, and I told them I don't see that happening soon, they're not in a rush. So when the time comes, or if the time comes that we're doing a bigger renovation over there, and we're willing to remove those carefully instead of just having them smashed out of there, I warned them there could be some additional cost to removing them carefully, and the board might ask that they pick up some of that cost. That seems to feel more reasonable to them. I think when push comes to shove, it's the one at the front of the church that they want, the St. Paul one, not the others. And that if it meant paying a little extra to make sure we can have it removed carefully, they'll do that. And at the moment, they want to know if they can have the crosses. So I'm here to ask you if we can give the crosses from the church to the St. Catherine Drexel Parish.
Did you have any other things?
Nope. I'll tell you all just because, you want to know that we've been thorough. I took photos of all of these windows and the crosses, and I sent them to an auctioneer back in the spring, and he was a little like, probably over. So I went down that road just to, feeling like it was part of our due diligence was to find out if we could sell these for any value that we could then use to help work on the building, and I didn't get the eager, warm, fuzzy response.
I don't see any.
Yeah.
They've taken the time to stop out to request it.
So you want to make a motion?
I make a motion that we give St. Catherine Drexel Parish the crosses from the early learning center.
those in favor?
Aye.
And then it didn't make the agenda, but if it's okay, it's on the same kind of general idea. I think we bring the board donations of greater than $1,000 to accept, and we received a donation today of exactly $1,000. And although we received it from the TL Store reservation, it's really a bunch of donations from folks in the community. They've asked, this is just like the last donation you received, and I think one of these things might be related to the other, because I think Mr. Ellis was here the night that you took a donation to offset
So that's what I was
lunch
gonna
debt.
ask, can we just kind of keep that in that account to offset once it builds up again? Cause didn't we just pay off the debt? I thought at our last meeting, we got a donation to pay off the debt.
I don't know that it was enough to pay all of the existing
Oh,
debt.
no.
No.
So
Oh,
we
geez.
haven't, I have to sit down with the principal and the food service director to go over exactly how we're gonna apply it. And the same thing will happen with this one as well.
So I think, so first is, it's wonderful to get a donation like this, and you get to vote to accept it. And we actually have to check in the front office, if not already in the bank. Then there's another related conversation. I did get a phone call, an inquiry from the community about this information being in public. So I want to say, and have it here on the record in this meeting, that there was a number, a total amount of lunch debt that we have at this school being discussed in public. It's not accurate, and it didn't come from us.
Yeah, we've never had a number.
But we don't advertise that. But it is always the case that there are families in arrears in
I
all
wonder-
school food service programs, because we cannot and don't want to deny food to a child.
Yeah. Do you think that was because we accepted the donation and people just misunderstood?
I mean, and it does exist, so it's not,
Right.
you know, it does exist. It always exists. It always exists. There are always families in arrears.
Thank you for the donation.
So we need a motion to
I make,
accept.
I make a motion to accept the $1,000 donation to go towards outstanding school lunch tours.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And was Debbie gonna do, she was gonna do a letter for the first one, if she could do one.
Yep.
Please. Alright, that brings us to personnel.
I'd like to take the first item as a non-public.
Okay.
Make a motion to accept the resignation of Dorothy Mayhew.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So that means we'll be.
We have openings.
If we haven't already, yeah.
Alright, that brings us to our second public input session, if anyone has anything they would like to speak to. Okay, closing public input. And we do need non-public, both of those, personnel and negotiations. Personnel, safety, and negotiations.
Yes.
Make a motion to go into non-public under 91-A:32A and C, as well as 91-A:21A.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Oh, actually, sorry, roll call.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. We are now in non-public session. Thank you all for joining us this evening.